Russell Wilson has signed a one-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers for close to the league minimum of $1.21 million. Why would he take such a cheap deal? Because the Broncos are paying him $39 million this year. He's going to get paid no matter what. He visited the Steelers last week. They didn't sign him immediately, but now he does. Do you like this for Pittsburgh?
I do like it. It is a cheap, team-friendly deal. You get a veteran quarterback and somebody who can certainly lead an offense. Maybe he's not going to put up MVP-style numbers, but he's actually coming off a year in which he was actually very efficient and made very few mistakes. So this is all the Pittsburgh Steelers are asking for their quarterback. Because when's the last time they had great quarterback play in Pittsburgh? It was probably Ben Roethlisberger back in his heyday. And even going back to Ben Roethlisberger, wasn't he the quarterback that won a Super Bowl his second year, throwing 130 yards in the Super Bowl? So this is a team that has some success with quarterbacks not having to do too much at the helm of that offense. So I do like it. I feel like he will certainly be the guy to beat, even though I think that is the part of the headline that you do need to read, because I think on Ian Rappaport's tweet, he said he was brought in to compete for the starting job. So I think they're saying that he's not the entrenched starter, but wouldn't you say that he has to at least have the best chance?
Well, yes. I also think that ultimately this is the best way to sign Russell Wilson at this point in his career, right? He's 35 years old. He actually was not terrible last year. Now, I know that in his first year in Denver, he really struggled, and he wasn't all-world last year. But if you look at his numbers, there was significant improvement. I think it was pretty clear that Sean Payton did not want him in Denver, so a fresh start was needed all the way around. But when you sign a guy with this pedigree for the league minimum, why not? Steelers GM Omar Khan said he had, quote, full faith in Kenny Pickett. That was back at the NFL Combine. But ultimately, you can have these guys compete. Why not? If all of a sudden Kenny Pickett goes out and balls out in training camp and Russell continues sort of this slow downward slide, you say, look, Russ is making the league minimum. We're going to go with Kenny Pickett. But ultimately, I do think Russell is clearly the better choice here. So they can, coaches do this all the time anyway, right? It's a lot of coach speak. It's, these guys are going to compete, and we all know who the guy is going to be. I'd be stunned if Russell Wilson is not the guy.
Yeah, I'd be stunned too. The guy's won a Super Bowl. And I've said this before. I feel like people tend to forget that once upon a time, he was a very good quarterback. And he certainly has the experience, which is something that Kenny Pickett does not have. But if you look at Russell Wilson, we have seen journeyman quarterbacks have a lot of success at other places. Maybe they're not the league MVPs, but look what we saw with Joe Flacco for a little flash this season. Look what we saw with Baker Mayfield this year, who's now back with the Bucs. So I do think it's possible for quarterbacks to go to a different environment and succeed, especially since it feels like the expectations are so much lower for Russell Wilson now. I don't think he can go as low as he went in Denver, right? So maybe he hit rock bottom only to rebound, because now the only place to go feels like it's up.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think part of it is clearly performance, but then part of it is just getting off to the wrong start in Denver. And we all read those stories, right? Where when Russ first came into the Mile High City, he had his own office, he had his own people, which is a very easy way to alienate yourself from the rest of the team. You're the new guy. I don't care how accomplished you are. Are you a part of this locker room or not? And he comes in with all these different people. And that's the first thing that Sean Payton did when he took over the Broncos, which was say, look, we're getting rid of this office. We're getting rid of your people. We are going to treat you like the rest of the players on this team and equal the playing field, so to speak. And when that's how you start with a new organization, if you don't blow away expectations, then almost immediately you are due for a downfall. And so I think it's not just being better like he was last year. Ultimately, he needs a new situation where when he walks into that locker room, he's meeting those guys for the first time without his people, with maybe his ego a little bit in check, and he can sort of start from scratch. If anyone needs that, I feel like it's Russell Wilson. Patrick, is Indiana State going to make the tournament? They've had a very good season, but lost to Drake in the conference tournament final. and they were sort of just kind of hanging around the top 25 for a while. Of course, we know about the history with Larry Bird there, but do they have a chance to get an at-large bid?
I think that they are, the team that understandably is being looked at more than anybody else here over the last 24 hours or so. And two, they're not really they don't have a profile that's like other teams. So they only have one quad one victory, and that's at Bradley, which is probably not the team that you thought I was going to say. They have one victory, I think, against a projected tournament team at the moment, two, actually. They have one over Drake at home, and they have one on a neutral court over Toledo, who leads the Mid-American Conference. So there's not a lot of strength at the top. At the same time, there were a lot of chances for this team to trip up, and it didn't. They went 22-1 in quad 3 and 4 games combined. They had that kind of weird loss to Illinois State back in mid-February or so. But the thing that I'm a little suspicious of the committee, and I get a little more suspicious every year, is there sort of a mid-major spot in Dayton waiting for somebody? And when you look through the years in the 68-team format, there's only been 2 seasons where there hasn't been somebody out of those top 6 conferences that's been there. Is Indiana State this year's 2019 Belmont? Are they this year's 2021 Drake? And I think they're a team that's going to be sitting there rooting for Florida Atlantic to win the American, for Dayton to win the A-10, and for pretty much all those teams around the edge of the field to just fall apart, whether that's St. John's losing to Seton Hall, whether that's New Mexico getting an early exit, whether it's all those ACC teams going out on down the line. So I think Indiana State can. I think they are really right at the edge of the field right now. I think they have a chance, but I certainly wouldn't want to say for sure one way or the other at this point. It's really, really close.
I'm going to go with Cormac Ryan. And just because of him performing on that stage when Carolina needed him most, he was unstoppable, particularly from long range. You talked about that. Even in the second half, had some clutch plays. Carolina, I think, trailed for a handful of seconds in that game. And what I loved about Ryan's performance and Carolina's performance in particular is that Duke made a run. And the guys talked about after the game that they listened to assistant coach Jeff Lebo, who said, look, Duke is going to make a run in the second half. It's going to happen. And when it does, you're going to have to respond. Duke hit a three-pointer. They pulled within one, just like Lebo said, and Carolina responded immediately, primarily because Ryan was just so red hot from deep and because, this was his night. Career high 31 in Durham in a spot like this where Wynn captured that regular season conference title outright. I thought he was spectacular. So he's going to get my MVP Monday award.
Man, these get tough this time of year because we have seen so many performances, especially this weekend. Didn't even mention Luka Doncic getting a 6th straight triple-double. Caitlin Clark is in it every single week. But I think for me, it has to go to the players who are punching their ticket or their team's ticket to March Madness. What a meaningful game for Jalen Blackman of Stetson basketball. This is the first time Stetson has ever been to the NCAA tournament, so I feel like the MVP has to go to him. This is a big time for Stetson basketball. I think Georgetown women's basketball, what a story there. But this is March. We are seeing great storylines across the board. So this is the best time of year for hoops, but I think it has to be those teams that are punching those tickets to March Madness, those small schools that are certainly going to enjoy the trip. So I'm going to go Jalen Blackman, Stetson basketball.